The Mazda CX-5 is perhaps one of Mazda's most important SUVs in our market. The mid-size SUV space is an incredibly competitive one, and the CX-5, outside of the Proton X70, has quite a chokehold on the market. People love the way it looks, people love the way it drives, and people love the way it makes them feel. But the general consensus is that when you buy an SUV, your life is kind of over. You've given up on the fun in life and you've gone for something practical. However, today, this particular CX-5 tries to buck the trend because under the bonnet is a proper firecracker of an engine, a 2.5-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine with over 400 Newton meters of torque. So is this the answer for the consummate family man who doesn't want to give up on having a little fun on the weekends? In his car, that is. My name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring, and this is our review of the Mazda CX-5 2.5 Turbo. Now, one of the biggest selling points of the Mazda CX-5 are its looks. And the thing is, while a lot of people like this car, my colleagues like the look of this car, I kind of don't. So I'm just going to be as objective about this as possible. So at the front, you have this very aggressive Predator-like face. This is as part of the Kodo design, and so they like to have this massive gaping grille in the front, which is framed by this very thick, pronounced chrome bar, which unfortunately is in two pieces, so there's this little line in the middle there. You have a floating Mazda badge with a 360-degree camera mounted up front. You get LED fog lights kind of just nestled all the way down there, and you get full LED headlights. The indicators, however, are still bulb type, but these are adaptive beam LEDs, and so they change the pattern or raise and whatever. Anyway, moving down the side, we have these dual tone 19-inch alloy wheels. Believe it or not, these are actually 19-inch alloy wheels. They look kind of small, don't they? I suspect there's something to do with the dual tone look to it, but these are actually 19-inch alloy wheels. They fill up the arches quite nicely, and they are wrapped in Toyo Prozec, whatever. I don't really pay attention to Toyo tires, but they're quite quiet and they're quite grippy, but we'll talk about that in the driving section. Anyway, you have these very pronounced sort of cladding all the way around the car. It is actually an even size all the way around, and it is a normal size body cladding as opposed to the CX-30 where the body cladding kind of went mental. You also get this sticker. You don't actually. This is just here because our test car has the sticker because Burma's wanted us to look like sales advisors for a weekend, I guess. You have these freestanding wing mirrors. You also have a chrome strip that goes down the side of the windows and up toward the back, which I think is kind of distinctive, but I feel like this would look better if the chrome kind of went all the way around, but that's just me. Anyway, and on the rear, you have a very small spoiler and these very small sort of corner winglet-y thingies, which are apparently there to help aid aerodynamics. You also have these very small set of tail lights, which are also not full LED. You get LED brake lights and LED positioning lights, but these are bulb and that's a bulb, and it just, the back of the CX-5 to me is the weirdest part for me to take in. I think it's because if you notice there's absolutely no chrome on the rear except for the badge, and because of that it just kind of, there's so much metal here, it just doesn't gel with me very well. Anyway, you've got the fog lights down there, which as a PSA should only be turned on during foggy conditions or during heavy rain and not without it, Vios drivers. And you also get some black body cladding down here, and you have a you have dual exhaust tips. Now, the only thing that will tell you that this is a 2.5T, the flagship CX-5, is that badge, which says 2.5 and then there's a big red T on it. That's it. Really, genuinely, that's all there is to it. Anyway, so that's the outside look of the CX-5. Now, if we look at the interior, specifically at the boot, you have a powered tailgate, which is not hands-free operated, and in the back, you have a little over 500 liters of space. Now, objectively, this isn't the biggest in its class, but it is a practical amount of space. You can, of course, fold the seats flat 40-20-40 via these little hooks here, so you don't even have to reach all the way into the cabin. You also get this tonneau cover which hooks up to the tailgate and extends via this little thing. This is actually quite unique. I've never seen this on another sort of mass market SUV before, and I think it's quite ingenious. It's a lot better than having those flappy covers that sort of sit there. And of course, you can also take out the tonneau cover altogether. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit underneath the boot floor. Now, speaking of underneath the boot floor, you have a space saver spare wheel and some tire kit and whatever, the usual with Mazdas lah. But in any case, everything is sort of fit back here. And of course, you have the requisite Mazda coil mats because... Anyway, the exterior of the Mazda is nice to most people, just not to me, and the boot is adequate for most people as well. So now let's go and look at the interior and see if maybe my opinion might change a little bit. Now, inside the Mazda CX-5, I'm certainly a lot more agreeable. So for starters, you have a lot of nice feeling material everywhere. So you get this stitched sort of faux leather up here and stitched faux leather up on the dash, and even the top of the dash is this nice squidgy plastic. You also get nice soft leather everywhere. So you get nice soft leather around the steering wheel, nice soft leather on the seats. But there is something a little bit weird. The stitching on the dash is in like a dark grey, and then the stitching on the seats and on the lower parts of the doors is like this bronze color. I find it a bit weird that there's this contrast, but okay. You also get this fake plasti wood down the side. One of my audience members decided to try and correct me and say that this is actual wood. Unfortunately, in our market, this is not actual wood. This is actual 100% pure plasti wood. So that's, I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, moving down the center console, you can see that again you have this very Mazda design. So you have a floating screen up here in the middle, which is not, oh no, it is touch sensitive, but it's very far away. So realistically, they just want you to sort of use the Mazda MZD Connect controller down here. You also get an expanse of piano black plastic down here. I have to say this is genuinely extensive the way they've used it here, and because it's at such a regular touch point, it gets really dirty and marked up very quickly, so that's not much of a good thing. But anyway, like I said, because it's a very Mazda interior, the emphasis is on width, so you get a lot of chrome elements down here, and everything is sort of thin and wide to emphasize the width as much as possible. Of course, as in any Mazda, the driving position is absolutely perfect. The steering wheel is perfectly sized and the rim is quite nice and it's very pleasing to hold, and all the controls fall very easily to hand. Ergonomics is a very important thing to Mazda, and so everything is designed to be very easily accessible to the driver. Up ahead you get a semi-digital instrument cluster, so there is a screen in the middle which mostly displays your speed as well as pertinent information like your trip information and your your advanced driver assist features and stuff like that. You also get actual dials for your tachometer as well as your speed and your temperature, your fuel and your temperature. You also get a multifunction steering wheel with your usual array of buttons, that's all standard. You get automatic lights and automatic wipers, that's all standard. You don't, however, get paddle shifters, which is a bit weird, which means if you want to drive this car intently, you will unfortunately have to resort to using the gear lever to flick up and down. Anyway, as we go further down, this car does get dual zone climate control as standard. You also get some vents in the back for extra comfort. This car does come with a pretty good sound system as far as I'm concerned, and you can use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the MZD Connect system. Now, I need to talk a lot more because there's so much for me to talk about this car. So you get electric seats on both sides for the 2.5T because it is a flagship model. You also get memory settings for the driver's seat, 2 memory settings. So husband and wife, for example, can set up different driving positions. You also get, it's nice in here. You also get things like the, you get 360-degree cameras, you get all-round parking sensors, you get lane keep assist and traction control and all that sort of nonsense. It's quite well equipped, this car. The only thing, as far as I can tell, the only thing this car doesn't come with is lane centering assist and adaptive cruise control. It does actually come with autonomous emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and that sort of thing. And it's got your pre-collision warning and so on. That's all really, really good. It's great to see that a family car is so well equipped in terms of safety features. This is the sort of safety features that we should expect in a car like this. In any case, the seating position, like I said, is perfect. So now that I've set this up in my ideal driving position, we can talk about the back. So space in the rear is actually pretty good. You get 2 ISOFIX mounts. You also get some USB ports in the center armrest. You also get a couple of cup holders, again, in the center armrest. And as I said earlier, you also get a couple of aircon vents. In terms of legroom and headroom, I can sit behind myself quite comfortably. Headroom, of course, is not an issue whatsoever. The rear seats can recline in various degrees in order to allow for maximum comfort. You can also individually pop the middle seat down, fold it down in case you have longer items that you need to carry. And as far as I'm concerned, it feels very versatile and very practical. The CX-5 is clearly a vehicle that's been very clearly thought out for family use, and it's evident sort of all around the vehicle. But in any case, I've yapped long enough. A Mazda is about the driving experience, and this is the most powerful Mazda CX-5 that money can buy. So let's get it out on the road and see how it drives. So, driving the Mazda CX-5 2.5 Turbo is, well, I'll say it's an interesting experience. So under the bonnet, there is a 2.5-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine producing 220 horsepower and 440 Newton meters of torque. Power goes to all 4 wheels via a 6-speed automatic Skyactiv gearbox. And it must be said that this car is blazingly fast. So if I just hit the throttle, the sheer torque in this car means that it just picks up and goes like nobody's business. This car just seems to have an endless amount of pulling power. Now, it must be said that this car does not come with paddle shifters, and the automatic gearbox is not necessarily the fastest acting thing in the world. And so, very clearly, this car is geared towards, let's say, the sort of driver that enjoys driving a little bit, but isn't perhaps like, say, a proper professional driver kind of thing. They'll be able to enjoy the fact this car is quite dynamic, it's quite engaging to drive, sure, but it's not for someone who wants like super snappy fast responses. It's good, but it's not great, I think, in that regard. But that said, not everyone is a driver's driver, you know, and a lot of people just want a car that is comfortable and reliable and dependable and great for them and their families. And in that sense, this car is fantastic because of that engine and its relentless amount of torque. It means that you can get up to speed on the motorway quite easily without having to stress the engine. You barely hear it. Like now, as I'm driving along, it barely even hits 2000 RPM because this car has so much torque from so low down. It just pulls the car up to a manageable speed and it just sits there quite comfortably. So on the motorway, this would be a fantastic companion. I've no doubt that on a long distance trip, if you still remember what those are, since it feels like we've been in lockdown for a billion years, this car would be quite impressive. On top of that, it also means that when you're driving in town, it's worth bearing in mind that, as I said earlier, the responses are not exactly the fastest in the world, which means during cut and shut traffic, you might not want to try darting around as if you're in some sort of city car, but with a little bit of forethought before your maneuvers, the Mazda CX-5 can be made to maneuver relatively quickly into city-type spots. But what I love about this car is the fact that even though it's quite large, this is after all a mid-size SUV, which contends against cars like the Hyundai Tucson, the Kia Sportage, the Honda CR-V, the Volkswagen Tiguan and stuff like that. It feels like a much smaller car when you drive it. As I said earlier, this car is quite dynamic and quite engaging, which means through the corners, it's so confidence inspiring. Like every other Mazda, you get this incredibly connected and communicative steering wheel, which just tells you exactly what the wheels are doing. It really does inspire confidence. On top of that, this car does come with an all-wheel drive system, which means that you can actually shuffle power between the wheels that have the most amount of torque, which means that you will always have the grip on hand in order to get you in and out of a sticky situation should you need it. And the suspension in this car, of course, is incredibly well judged. Almost all Mazdas are that way. And so it's got this perfect balance between car control as well as interior comfort. Nothing, absolutely nothing upsets the overall serenity in this car. The expansion joint that I just went over is notorious for being deep and jarring, but in this car you barely feel it. You hear it, but you barely feel it. So this car is very well insulated. It's an incredibly good family car, and it balances the need between being fun and being comfortable very, very well. It's practical as a family car and it's still fun and engaging as a driver's car, which means this is truly the best of both worlds in the driving sense. There are some downsides, of course. One is that if you are like me, you will find the design rather uninspiring, and so you may be further swayed by cars like the Toyota RAV4 or even the Volkswagen Tiguan Highline, which both look a little bit more engaging, I guess, compared to this, but that is a personal opinion. In terms of fuel economy, as you can guess, this car isn't all that great when it's in town. I think my team and I have only been able to get about 10-ish kilometers per litre, and that's if we're driving like absolute saints, which means, again, my recommendation is, of course, to go with these smaller naturally aspirated engines if the majority of your drives are done in town. Those engines will be a lot more frugal. What else? You might not like, if you don't like plastic wood, you might not like this car. I'm actually genuinely struggling to come up with actual objectively bad things about this car, because a lot of what it does very well. It drives well, it's very comfortable, it's very spacious, it's practical, it's a good car. And because it's a Mazda and it's backed by Burma's commitment to the Mazda brand as well as the relatively large dealer network, it means that you can drive this car in relative confidence, knowing that you are backed up by a reputable service network with good after-sales service as well. And of course, these cars do come with a very impressive warranty as is. So what do I think of the Mazda CX-5? Well, as I said earlier, it's a very good all-round car. But talking about the 2.5 litre turbo especially, this car is all-wheel drive, and this car does have a massive amount of power, which means long-distance drives in this thing should be an absolute doddle. And thanks to the rather comprehensive suite of active safety features, which include but are not limited to things like blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, autonomous emergency braking, and pre-collision warning, it means that this is a pretty consummate family car. If I had a family, I wouldn't mind shuffling them along in one of these. Compared to the naturally aspirated versions of this car with a 2-litre NA Skyactiv engine, this definitely has a lot more poke, a lot more grunt, and is definitely a lot more suitable for people who spend a lot more time on the motorway. However, if you spend more time in town, I would advise that you look at one of the lower 2-litre naturally aspirated variants, as those cars will obviously return slightly better fuel economy compared to cars like the Honda CR-V, the Volkswagen Tiguan, and even the Toyota RAV4 with its 2-litre and 2.5-litre naturally aspirated dynamic force engines. This car definitely offers the most impressive performance numbers out there, and this will definitely appeal to those of you who drive long distance very often, who need that poke, who need that grunt, who need that shove on a more regular basis. I can see the appeal of this car. Some people believe the 2.5-litre turbo might be a little bit too much engine for this car. I, however, think that there is definitely a market for this, and it might not be as wide a market perhaps as the rest of the CX-5 range, but the thing about Mazda is that because the CX-5 range is as wide as it is, there is a CX-5 for you. And if you are the sort of person who needs a little bit more power, mercifully at least Mazda offers this car for you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can follow me on my socials. All the links are in the description below. Again, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, jangan bodoh.